This is going straight into your college fund. That phrase echoed throughout my childhood. Every birthday card from my grandparents with a $20 bill, every A on my report card that earned a reward, every small inheritance from a distant relative, even the tooth fairy money, once I was old enough to know it was my parents leaving those quarters under my pillow. "We're putting this in your college jar," they would say, holding up the bills for me to see before ceremoniously walking over to the large glass jar that sat prominently on our living room mantel. The jar was nothing fancy, just a repurposed pickle jar with Alex's college fund written on it in permanent marker, decorated with stickers I had added over the years. I watched this ritual hundreds of times growing up. Sometimes it was just a few dollars, other times it was larger amounts. $100 from my grandfather when he won at the casino, $500 from the settlement after our fender bender, $250 that I earned one summer mowing lawns. Each deposit was made with the same solemn announcement, often accompanied by a lecture about the importance of education and planning for the future. "College is expensive," my father would say, "but we're making sure you'll be covered. Not everyone is this fortunate." I believed them completely. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents, and parents don't lie about something so important, so fundamental to a child's future. At least, that's what I thought. My name is Alex, I'm 22 now, but this story starts on my 18th birthday, when everything I thought I knew about my parents and my future came crashing down. I had always been a good student, not exceptional, not the valedictorian type, but solid, B+ average, involved in a few clubs, played soccer until junior year when I tore my ACL. I worked hard because I knew that college was the expectation. My parents hadn't gone. My dad was a plumber and my mom worked as a secretary at an insurance office, but they constantly emphasized how different my life would be. "You'll be the first in the family to get a degree," they'd say. "You'll have opportunities we never had." Throughout my junior and senior years, they encouraged me to apply to good schools, not just the local community college or state university. When I hesitated because of costs, they pointed to the jar. "We've been saving since you were born," my mother assured me. "Apply wherever you want." So I did. I was accepted to several schools, including my dream university 3 states away. It was a private institution with a strong program in my field of interest and a price tag of about $45,000 per year. When the acceptance letter came, my parents hugged me and told me how proud they were. "Can we afford it?" I asked, eyeing the jar that, while large, certainly didn't look like it contained anywhere near enough for 4 years at that price. "Don't worry about that," my dad said, tapping the side of his nose. "The jar is just part of it. We've been putting money aside elsewhere, too." That made sense to me. Surely they wouldn't keep tens of thousands of dollars in cash just sitting on the mantelpiece. The jar was probably symbolic, with the real money in a bank account somewhere. My 18th birthday fell on a Saturday that year, 2 months before high school graduation. My parents made a big deal of it, inviting family over for dinner and cake. After everyone had eaten, my father called for silence and gave a speech about how proud they were of me, how I was going to accomplish great things, how becoming an adult meant new responsibilities and opportunities. Then, with a flourish, he lifted the college jar down from the mantel and placed it in front of me. "It's time," he said solemnly. "All these years of saving, and now you get to see the results of that discipline." The jar was large, about the size of a gallon milk container, and over the years the clear glass had become slightly clouded with dust and fingerprints. I could see there was something inside, but not clearly what or how much. A rush of anticipation and gratitude filled me. This was the moment that would launch my future. I removed the lid, tipped the jar, and waited for the cascade of cash to pour out onto the table. Nothing happened. I peered inside. There was a single piece of paper. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a fake check, the kind you see in advertisements, made out to me for reality dollars. I looked up at my parents, confused. They were both grinning widely. "What is this?" I asked. "Where's the money?" My father laughed. "You really thought we were saving for you all these years? That was just to teach you about the importance of education. The real lesson is that nothing in life is handed to you." My mother nodded in agreement. "Now you'll appreciate your education more because you'll have to work for it, just like we did." I stared at them in disbelief. "But you didn't go to college?" Exactly, my father said, and we did fine. If you want it badly enough, you'll find a way to make it happen. Scholarships, student loans, whatever. That's how the real world works. My aunt looked uncomfortable, my grandmother frowned, my younger cousins continued eating cake, oblivious to what was happening. I felt like I was in some bizarre hidden camera show, waiting for someone to jump out and tell me it was all a prank. Every time you said you were putting money in here, I said slowly, trying to process what was happening. Were you just pretending? My mother smiled indulgently. We weren't pretending, we were teaching. There's a difference. Sometimes we did put a few dollars in, my father added, but we'd take it out later when we needed it. Money is money. It doesn't make sense to just let it sit there when bills need to be paid. I felt sick. All those years, all those promises, all those moments when they made a show of depositing money into my future, it had all been a lie. Not just a white lie, not just an exaggeration, but an elaborate years-long deception designed to, what? Teach me some twisted lesson about disappointment? What about the money you said was in an account somewhere? The real college fund? I asked, already knowing the answer. My father shrugged. We never said that, you assumed. But they had said that. They had told me explicitly not to worry about college costs because they had it covered. They had encouraged me to apply to expensive schools, knowing I would incur massive debt. They had watched me open acceptance letters with excitement, never once suggesting that I might need to make different choices. I pushed back from the table and stood up. My eyes burned with tears I refused to shed. Not here, not in front of everyone. I need some air, I managed to say, and walked out the front door. I ended up at my best friend's house, where I spent the night after explaining everything to her and her parents. Her mother was appalled. Her father, who had always been kind to me, sat with us in their kitchen and helped me think through my options. Community college for 2 years, then transfer. Scholarship applications that hadn't yet closed. Work-study programs, gap year to save money. When I returned home the next day, my parents acted like nothing unusual had happened. The jar was back on the mantel, empty now of even the fake check, as if erasing the evidence of their deception. When I tried to talk to them about it, they dismissed my feelings entirely. "You're being dramatic," my mother said. It was a life lesson. "Honestly, I'm disappointed in your reaction," my father added. "I thought we raised you to be more resilient than this." That was the moment I realized a fundamental truth about my parents. They weren't capable of seeing how their actions affected me. In their minds, they had done nothing wrong. In fact, they believed they had done something commendable by teaching me this valuable lesson about self-reliance. The weeks that followed were a blur of recalibration. I declined my acceptance to my dream school and enrolled in community college instead. I found a full-time job at a local warehouse that would work around my class schedule. I opened a bank account without my parents' names on it and started saving every penny I could. My parents' reaction to these decisions was bizarrely positive. "Now you're thinking practically," my father said approvingly when I told them about community college. "That's the smart play." "See, our lesson worked," my mother added. "You're making mature decisions." I didn't have the energy to argue with them, to explain that I wasn't making these choices because I suddenly understood some profound truth about self-reliance. I was making them because I had been betrayed by the people who were supposed to support me, and now I had to salvage what I could of my future plans. The summer after graduation was tense. I worked as much as possible, coming home only to sleep. My parents seemed genuinely confused by my emotional distance. They tried to engage me in normal family activities, movie nights, backyard barbecues, weekend trips to the lake, as if nothing had changed. "Why are you still sulking?" my mother asked one evening. "It's been months. Normal people don't hold grudges this long." I realized then that they genuinely expected me to just get over it, to laugh along with their clever life lesson and move on. They had no concept of the depth of the betrayal I felt. Fall came, and with it, the start of classes at community college. I had managed to save enough for my first semester's tuition and books. My plan was to complete my general education requirements there, maintain a high GPA, and then transfer to a 4-year university with whatever scholarships I could secure. On my first day, as I was preparing to leave for class, my father handed me an envelope. "We're proud of you," he said. "This is to help with expenses." Inside was $500 in cash. My first instinct was gratitude. I could certainly use the money. But then a thought struck me. Is this from my college jar? I asked, money that was supposed to be mine anyway. My father's expression darkened. We're trying to help you here. A simple thank you would suffice. I took the money because I needed it, but the interaction left me feeling hollow. It wasn't a gift, it was a fraction of what should have been mine all along, now being presented as a generous gesture on their part. That pattern continued throughout my first year of college. Occasional gifts of money when I was clearly struggling, always presented as evidence of their generosity and support, never with any acknowledgement of the original deception. Meanwhile, I was working 40 hours a week at the warehouse while maintaining a full course load. I was exhausted constantly. My grades were good, but not excellent because I simply didn't have the time or energy to devote to studying that my classmates did. I watched as friends from high school posted about their exciting freshman experiences at universities across the country, and I tried not to feel resentful. The spring semester of my freshman year, something unexpected happened. My English professor pulled me aside after class one day. "You're one of the strongest writers I've had in years," she said. "Have you considered applying for the Turner Scholarship? It's for transfer students, full tuition for your junior and senior years." I hadn't heard of it, but I immediately went home and researched everything I could find. The requirements were steep. A 3.8 GPA, exemplary writing samples, strong recommendations, and a rigorous interview process. But the reward was significant. If I could maintain my grades while working full-time for one more year, I might have a shot at finishing my degree without crushing debt. For the first time since my 18th birthday, I felt a glimmer of hope. I threw myself into my schoolwork with renewed determination, often studying until 2 or 3 in the morning after my warehouse shift ended. My parents noticed the change in my demeanor, but attributed it to me finally growing up, rather than finding a new path forward. I didn't tell them about the scholarship opportunity. I didn't want their false encouragement, or worse, their discouragement disguised as practical advice. This was my journey now, and I was determined to walk it alone. At the end of my freshman year, I had a 3.85 GPA and had saved enough to cover my sophomore year expenses. I spent the summer preparing my application for the Turner Scholarship, writing and rewriting my essays, securing recommendations, practicing for the interview. When fall came, I submitted everything and tried not to obsess over the outcome. In November, I received an email requesting an interview. In December, just before the holiday break, I got the call. I had been awarded the scholarship. I would be able to transfer to State University next fall, with my tuition fully covered for my final 2 years. When I shared the news with my parents, their reaction was mixed. Pride, certainly. Their daughter had accomplished something impressive, but also something that looked almost like disappointment, as if my success had robbed them of the "I told you so" moment they had been anticipating when my impractical approach to education inevitably failed. "That's great, honey," my mother said. "But remember, scholarships can be taken away if your grades slipped. Don't get too comfortable." "State isn't a top-tier school," my father added, "but it's solid, very practical choice." Their backhanded congratulations couldn't dim my sense of achievement. I had done this despite them, not because of them. The realization was both empowering and profoundly sad. As my sophomore year progressed and my transfer plans solidified, I found myself facing a decision about my living situation. State University was an hour away, close enough to commute if necessary, but far enough that living on campus made more sense, especially given my work schedule. "You can live at home and drive in," my father suggested when I mentioned looking at housing options. "Save yourself thousands in room and board." On the surface, it was practical advice. But the thought of remaining under their roof, continuing to navigate their peculiar blend of undermining support, filled me with dread. I needed a clean break, a fresh start, an environment where I could focus on my education without the emotional baggage of my childhood deception hanging over me. "I've already applied for housing," I told them. "The scholarship covers part of it, and I've saved enough for the rest." They were displeased, but couldn't really argue with my logic. I was an adult making my own financial decisions, and I had proven my ability to support myself. The day I moved into my dorm at State was one of the happiest of my life. My parents helped transport my belongings, made awkward small talk with my roommate and her family, and then prepared to leave. As we stood in the parking lot saying goodbye, my mother handed me another envelope. "A little something to help with expenses," she said. Inside was $1,000, by far the largest amount they had ever given me at once. I thanked them sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't hate my parents. I understood in some ways why they had done what they did. They had grown up in families where higher education wasn't valued or expected. They had made their way through life without degrees or financial support from their parents. In their minds, they were preparing me for the real world as they understood it. But as I watched them drive away, I made a promise to myself. If I ever had children, I would never use deception as a teaching tool. I would never build up their hopes only to intentionally dash them. And if I said I was saving for their future, every single dollar would be exactly where I promised it would be when the time came to use it. Today I'm in my senior year at State, set to graduate with honors in the spring. I haven't been home except for brief holiday visits in over 2 years. Our relationship remains cordial but distant. My parents still don't fully understand why the empty jar was such a significant betrayal. They bring it up occasionally, usually as an example of how they taught me to be self-sufficient. "Look at you now," they'll say. "If we had handed you a jar full of money, you wouldn't have developed the work ethic that got you that scholarship." I don't argue anymore, I simply nod and change the subject. They believe what they need to believe, and I've accepted that they'll never truly acknowledge the harm they caused. The empty pickle jar still sits on their mantel, now repurposed as a container for loose change and buttons. Every time I see it, I feel a complex mix of emotions: anger, sadness, pride in what I've overcome, determination to be different. And in my apartment near campus, on my own desk, sits another jar. This one is smaller, newer, cleaner. It doesn't have a label, and only I know its purpose. Every month, I put a small amount of money into it, sometimes just a few dollars, sometimes more when I can spare it. It's not for me, it's for my future niece or nephew. My younger sister is 16 now, and in a few years, she'll be facing the same challenges I did. Our parents haven't changed. They're already talking about her college fund jar that sits next to my empty one on the mantel. She's smart enough to be suspicious after watching what happened to me, but I still see her eyes drift to that jar sometimes, hope battling with doubt. She doesn't know about my jar yet, no one does, but when she turns 18, I'll be there with something real. Not enough for a full education, but a genuine start. A tangible proof that not everyone makes promises they don't intend to keep. Maybe a few $1,000s that might cover her first semester's books or help with housing. The money itself matters less than what it represents: a broken cycle, a different way of treating the people you claim to love, a promise made and kept. Sometimes I wonder if my reaction to the empty jar was overblown. After all, many students put themselves through college without any expectation of family support. Maybe in some alternate reality, if my parents had simply been honest from the beginning, "We can't afford to save for your college, you'll need to figure it out yourself," I would have accepted that without resentment. It wasn't the lack of money that betrayed me, it was the years of deliberate deception. That's the lesson I took from the empty jar, though not the one my parents intended to teach. Honesty matters. Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to fully restore. And sometimes the people who should support you the most are the ones who understand you the least. As for me, I'm looking toward the future now. Graduate school is on the horizon, fully funded through a teaching assistantship I earned through my own merit. I have a small but supportive circle of friends who know my story and understand why certain things, promises, transparency, financial honesty, matter so deeply to me. And that jar on my desk continues to fill, dollar by dollar, not with just money, but with the promise of something different for the next generation. My parents gave me an empty jar and called it a lesson. I'm filling one back up and calling it love. That feels like the best revenge, and the most meaningful response to that moment 4 years ago when my world shifted on its axis. They showed me who they were with that empty jar. Now I get to decide who I will be with my full one.